Just a Jewel with our host, Arthur Malik.
Welcome to Just a Jewel. I'm your host, Arthur Malik. Today we have an intriguing guest by the name of Janet Donat. Janet, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a child development specialist and I work for Family Services of Westchester. And for the past 10 years, I have been coordinating a program called eMERGE. It's an acronym, Educating Mothers to Embrace Reentry and Gain Employment. So I work pre-release reentry with incarcerated mothers at our county jail in Valhalla.
First and foremost, I just want to say that I want to tip my hat to you because I think it's a courageous act for someone to go inside a facility when anything can happen. What compelled you to want to go inside a facility and help mothers?
Well, I think probably my own experience of becoming a mother. I live right here in White Plains, and I have a comfortable life. I am married, I'm a homeowner, I have an education, and my adjustment to motherhood was really hard. And when that chapter of my life launched about 35 years ago, I think the wheels began to turn, and I just began to think, wow, this is hard for me. I wonder if it's hard for anybody else. And so for many years, I worked as a doula, which is somebody who supports women through the childbearing year. And I worked with probably the high-end demographic in this county. And that was very powerful work because motherhood is equalizing. It doesn't matter if you are a corporate Wall Street lawyer or you are living in the homeless shelter. When our babies arrive, they don't come with an instruction packet, and learning the ropes can be really brutal. So after about 20 years of working in that realm, I went to work for Family Services of Westchester, and I was asked to start a program for incarcerated mothers. And there's nothing courageous about entering into that system. I think that the women that are there, I only work with women, so clearly there are men and women housed at the Westchester County Jail. But I will speak from my experience working with the women, are incredibly courageous. And I have learned a lot from them and their perseverance, their resilience, and their desire to change their lives.
You use two profound words that I want to ask you about. You use reentry and education. In order to re-enter society, I think a proper education is necessary. What are the facets of education, if any, inside Valhalla?
Well, I know that BOCES has a presence there. I don't have any interface with that, and neither does Family Services of Westchester, but that they do provide men and women with the opportunity to get their GED, their high school equivalency diploma. Unlike the state system, the Westchester County Jail doesn't have access to as many educational programs. Most people that are housed at the Westchester County Jail are either awaiting sentencing and will move on to the state or federal system, or they will be serving a short sentence of, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, which does not really allow for any in-depth education. So the program that I offer, eMERGE, is labeled a parenting program by the Department of Corrections, and certainly we do talk about the experience of parenting, but rather than a strictly educational model, it is a reflective opportunity for the women to think about how their own experience of being parented, of being a child, has influenced the way they are with their children.
I think oftentimes than not, we get stuck when we hear the word education, we automatically think that it's from an academic perspective.
Right.
But what you're giving them is also education. You're giving them introspection. introspection. You have to look into yourself. You have to understand yourself. This is education. So not just from an academic perspective, but I think you're providing them with a major form of education.
Well, I appreciate that perspective, Malik, because I agree with you that there are many, many ways to learn, and I think that the women that I work with come with a very rich life experience. It may not be the life experience that I've had, but I learn from them. I may have some knowledge that I can share with them. But drawing on our own life experience and reflecting on that and having the opportunity to think, how has my own lived experience influenced the way I navigate through the world? And you know, when people are incarcerated, one thing that they do have a lot of is time.
Right.
And I just like to offer the women that I work with an opportunity to take advantage of that time to reflect, to think about what they really have to offer in this world and how they can hone those skills and how we can all begin to let go of that which doesn't serve us, that which has given us pain and trauma, and how do we begin to rework those neuro pathways in our brain that are wired as a result of our early childhood adverse experiences.
From a social perspective, your life does not run parallel to the females that you work with. So what compelled you to want to work with females that were incarcerated?
Well, you know, when I walk into the jail and I get into the room with the women that I work with and we close the door, and usually we can close the door, I just feel like all of the lines and labels that separate and define us in the world disappear. And we're all mothers at that table. So while some may say that my life is very different from the women sitting in the circle with me, and that's true, it has been. We have a shared humanity, and that's what we focus on. I have never been incarcerated, but I have certainly in my life felt shame and humiliation and embarrassment and regret and remorse. I've felt lonely and inadequate. And I've also experienced joy and accomplishment, and it's those human experiences that unite us, and that's what we focus on.
Okay. Recently, I did a talk at Fordham University based on undoing racism and solitary confinement. And at the conclusion of my talk, a female who just exited the police academy said that I need to speak to police officers because they are taught in the academy that a criminal is a criminal and they shouldn't see him as anything different. When you first entered Valhalla, was your perspective similar to that? Or you seen them automatically as human beings?
Well, because I was going in to work with mothers, I saw the women that I worked with as mothers. And I am not a trained corrections officer or a law enforcement professional. I'm a child development specialist. And I know that if we are looking at how to support a healthy development of a child, we have to look at how we can support the caretaker, the primary caretaker of that child. And the majority of the time, the primary caretaker of a child is a mother. So I was fortunate that I didn't come in with that lens.
I believe mothers are the infrastructure of society. Right? I sincerely believe that. Now, with them being extracted from society, how does that affect their children?
Well, I think that children of incarcerated mothers are the innocent victims of this system. And I think there is definitely a rippling and echoing impact of incarceration on children. A lot of the women that I work with have told their children that they are in the hospital, or they are away at school, or they're working, and they make that decision thinking that is absolutely the best thing for their child to hear. They think that they're protecting their child, and they have the best of intentions. But when a child suddenly has no access to the person that he or she holds most dear, that all of a sudden they disappear. That's very, very traumatic for a child. So what often happens is that the child starts to act out in school. The child can't make sense of why mommy isn't here all of a sudden. If mommy's in the hospital, then is mommy okay? Why can't I go visit mommy in the hospital? If mommy's on vacation, why didn't she take me? And a lot of times children don't either have the language or the voice to articulate all of this that's going on, so it comes out in their behavior in school. And a lot of times they have been given the message, as a lot of us have, that what goes on at home stays at home. Don't talk about your business at school. So there's a whole culture of shame that's built around this too. And it's very normal for children to start to act out in school. And so then, just anecdotally, the majority of the women that I work with in the jail will tell me that their children are on ADHD medication, hyperactivity disorder medication, because, when something traumatic happens, like a parent disappearing, children are always like, well, what's going to happen next? And it's real hard for me to sit still because, I better be really on the alert because I don't know what's going to disappear next in my life.
And that's profound. You said it is somewhat similar to what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yeah.
And it's sad that this is transpiring in the households. And this is why the children are being condemned. The children are acting out. And me personally, my personal opinion is that I don't think that the children or child should be lied to, because this is the same thing that they are punished for when they become older. So I think the truth is imperative, and I think that will sincerely set them free, if not for the mothers.
Absolutely. And I, of course, agree with you 100%, but I really try to allow for that voice to come from the peers in the group and not from me, because I haven't had that lived experience. Who am I to say you shouldn't be lying to your children? But when it comes from another woman in the group who is also incarcerated, it carries a lot more value. And so what I do is allow for that conversation to take place, and it usually does happen. Right. And it's all about trust, and it's about honesty. And a lot of times mothers will say, well, my child is only 3 years old. They don't understand. But we know that a child does understand, and a child often overhears adults talking. And I've seen children in preschool drawing pictures, and they will draw bars. I mean, they understand, a figure with bars. They pick up a lot more than we think that they do.
Okay. How long have you been working in Valhalla, and how is the recidivism rate with the women that you've been working with?
Well, I've been working in Valhalla. I'll be starting my 10th year this summer.
Wow, okay.
And that is thanks to a grant from the Westchester County Department of Social Services and the Westchester County Department of Corrections. Okay. So I'm really grateful in the last 10 years that, when we've been in kind of an austerity budget, that has been able to continue. I will tell you that the recidivism rate for the women who stay connected with me after they are released and engage in a program like Coming Home is very, very, very low. Very low.
What program is that?
The Coming Home program is a reentry program that happens in collaboration with the faith-based community to welcome men and women who are returning to the community after a period of incarceration. So Westchester County is very rich in services. We're very fortunate in Westchester County to have access to a lot of different programs and services. But in order for somebody to avoid recidivism, this is my opinion and my own kind of lived experience in doing this work for 10 years. We can offer them any number of services, but unless they internalize their own sense of self-worth and a sense of belonging and a sense of community, then services aren't going to fix anything. It may do something on a surface level, or but what and again I will say women because that's what I work with, but human beings, what human beings really need in order to succeed in any venture in life is a sense of belonging, a sense of acceptance, to feel loved, and to be able to walk into a place and not feel judged. And that, in my opinion, is what has been lacking in the reentry services that I have been referring to over the past 10 years. So when I had the opportunity to begin to coordinate coming home programs in various congregations in this county, it has been incredibly powerful for me and for the people that have participated in the program.
So do you teach self-worth?
Well, I think that self-worth is not a cognitive concept. It's not something we can teach. It's something that we experience. So in the Coming Home program, we begin with a shared dinner, and people from the community are invited. Our participants are there. But again, the lines that define and divide us outside of the program don't apply when we are all together. So we don't identify as the coordinator of the position or as a participant in the position in the program. We just share in conversation and reflection, and again connect on that human level. And then after the dinner, we do have a program that is focused on healing from the trauma, grief, and loss inherent in the experience of incarceration. After the dinner, the Coming Home dinner, where people from the community and our participants have a chance to share in conversation and reflection about their own experience of being a human being, then our participants go into the sanctuary, and we have a special program for them that deals with healing the trauma, grief, and loss associated with incarceration. So that if we want to really support the children of mothers who are incarcerated, we really do need to help the mothers to heal.
My question to you, is it not simultaneous? You don't think helping the mother and the child simultaneously would help, or do you think it has to be independent? The mother has to be first and then the child, because both of them is sick. Both of them still need that help.
Right.
So do you think it has to be a split, or can it be simultaneous?
Well, I think ideally the perfect model is the mother gets support, the child gets support, and the mother-child dyad, the mother and the child together get support. So some of the mothers that are currently in our Coming Home program in White Plains do not have custody of their children. So this is the perfect time for them to really focus on themselves and healing their own trauma. Ideally, the child is also receiving services, and working toward reunification will be supervised visits of the mother and child together. And that's a time where that interaction can be supported and guided by a professional that can really point out what's going well. It's always nice to take a strength-based approach, because all mothers, but especially mothers who have experienced adversity and certainly incarceration, are constantly being told what they're doing wrong.
What percentage, if you can pinpoint, is the children that goes into the system when their mothers are arrested? What percentage would you say?
Well, what I can speak to anecdotally but with confidence is that the vast majority of the mothers that I work with inside the jail have been in the foster care system themselves. All right, so we know that there is a generational cycle of incarceration that results from early child adversity. That is one result of early childhood adversity. We know that children are resilient, and with the proper supports in place, this cycle can be intercepted. But unless we are really paying attention to supporting and healing the trauma that the mothers are experiencing, while at the same time really looking at the impact of early childhood adversity on a child, on all domains of their development, on their social emotional development, on their cognitive development, their ability to function appropriately in a classroom, on their physical development. What we know now from scientific research is that early childhood adversity and what we now label as toxic stress, a dysregulation in the stress response system as a result of having a mother disappear, as a result of witnessing domestic violence, as a result of being physically or sexually
So it's perpetuated.
abused. It rewires a child's brain in a way that it turns on certain genes and turns off others, and so that a child is on hyper alert all the time. The adrenaline is always running. That fight or flight response gets turned on,
Cognitive
and
dissonance.
it doesn't get turned off.
Okay.
So that takes a toll on physical health, and that's the piece that we're just beginning. The research has been there for over 20 years, but we're just now beginning to have cross-systems collaboration between medicine, between education, between social service, and hopefully, law enforcement will be open to looking at this and seeing that, a dysregulated stress response system will manifest in a child's behavior, in a child's physical health, or a person. I'm talking about children, but it could be an adult too. And as Oprah Winfrey referenced on her recent spot on 60 Minutes, the question to ask now, and this has been around for a while, and social service has known of this for a while, but it's time for all of us, whether it's, a coworker that it's annoying us or a child in our classroom that's annoying us, that the question that we must stop and ask ourselves is not what's wrong with that person, but what happened to that person. To look at what is underlying that behavior. Because we can mask behaviors just like we can mask a cough with cough syrup. It's not if the cough is caused by pneumonia, it's not going to cure the pneumonia. We can mask behavior that we don't like with medications to subdue a child, but we're not getting to the underlying cause of that dysfunctional behavior or dysregulated behavior.
And what do you think the underlying cause is?
Trauma.
And this is why I asked you, do you think it's perpetuated? Because you said even most of the females that you're working with, most of them was in foster care also.
Yes.
So it's perpetuated, and when it's perpetuated, not just the foster care itself, but the self-hate. Because a lot of people think that they love their children. Because I was in this situation. My mother used to always tell me she loved me, but she abused us, and she took drunk alcohol, and she did this, and she went into the G building, she went crazy, she came back. So, but they would say that they loved their children. But how could you love your children or love your child and then you leave them? But like you said, it's not just their behavior because it's predicated on some other behavior or some other circumstances. You see? So it's predicated on something, and as you just described, that something must be found out. It must be revealed. And this is the only way we're going to heal them.
Absolutely. And as long as that core cause is shrouded in shame and humiliation and secrecy, it's not going to get healed. And I think that this is the case both individually and societally. And as society, we don't want to look at that because it's just easier to write a prescription. We know that's money. I know that, to prescribe someone is money, just like in the school system right now. And every child that gets on medication, the school system gets $500 funding. Every child who gets on medication in the school system, they get $500. I know a child that had an ear infection, running around crazy, and they talked the mother into putting the child on medication, and then they went to the doctor and they found out that the kid only had an ear infection. You see? So it's predicated on money when it comes to the pharmaceutical. I understand that. And I do think that we are very, very fortunate to live in a country where we do have access to medication. And I think that in some cases it certainly is warranted, but we do know, and I don't have these statistics off the top of my head, but we do prescribe more medication for children than any other nation in the world, just as we incarcerate more of our citizens than any other country in the world. I think that we really need to look hard at both of those statistics and see if there is not a better way to deal with trauma, because both of those are a result of trauma and toxic stress. When somebody has experienced adverse childhood experiences, they become dysregulated in their behavior, in their physiology. And you know, the good news is, with support, with intervention, that can be fixed. That can be fixed.
Do you think the root of trauma is unfair situations?
I think the root of trauma is isolation and not having a voice. I think that community, relationship, being heard and being validated as a human being can go a long way in healing the pain and adversity that leads to trauma.
See, though, I think we're similarly saying the same thing, because unfair situations is if I have you on my talk show right now but won't let you speak. I think that's unfair.
Right.
And we're combating each other. You're in agreement. You're saying something and I'm in a disagreement, but only I can speak and I just want you to hush up. I think that's an unfair situation, and I think that can ignite trauma.
Absolutely. And if you look even at what's happening in our country right now, we are so polarized. And it's really, I know personally, it's really hard for me to engage in conversation, let alone relationship, with somebody who I am in disagreement with politically, because I feel very strongly about some of the things that we've been talking about. Right. But we're not going to get anywhere unless we're willing to have courageous conversations, unless we're willing to listen to opposing views, and again, find our common point of connection in our human experience.
But even if that doesn't exist, just to respect itself. But however, I definitely appreciate you being on. You are a well of information, but we have to wrap it up now. But I can speak to you maybe for 10 shows at a time. We could keep going on and on.
We could continue this conversation. But thank you for having me on, Malik.
I definitely appreciate you. So I appreciate you guys for watching Just a Jewel with Arthur Malik. So until next time, stay great and stay blessed.
Just a Jewel with our host, Arthur Malik.